And thank you for joining us for the Minnesota Homeless Study Interviewer Training. This training will focus on navigating the interview so that we can get the best and most accurate data possible. Before we begin, let's start with some general information. First, we will navigate through some of the specific types of questions that you will find, but we won't walk through the entire interview. The questions we have chosen for this training are some of the more complicated questions, where we often see mistakes when we review the completed interviews. After you watch this video, it is very important that you practice once or twice, the whole way through, with someone that you know. This will eliminate mistakes during the night of the study. This interview is structured so that you will move from the left side of the page to the right side when there is a follow-up question. There are arrows that direct you to follow-up questions, and typically those are enclosed in the same box as the original question. All interviewer instructions are in bold capital letters. Those are instructions that you read to yourself and do not read out loud to the respondent. Most of the answers in this interview are closed-ended, so you will simply fill in the circle for the answer that the respondent gives you. Please stay within the lines when marking the response. In some cases, you will need to write out a brief answer when directed. We would like you to use a pencil to record your responses. Most sites will provide you with a pencil, but you should also bring your own as a backup. With that, let's start on the first page of the interview, which is designed to collect basic information and to ensure that we are interviewing people who are experiencing homelessness. In the top left corner of the front page, there is a location box. Typically, that will already be filled in with a sticker and you won't have to do anything. That will be true at most shelter sites. But if your form does not have that information, please write in the name of the location where you are conducting the interview. After that, write your name at the top of the form, along with the date and the time you started the interview. This is all very important information for our office to have. The rest of the front page includes screening questions to ensure we are talking with people who are eligible for the study. We only want to interview one person per household. Anyone outside of the household or immediate family, like a partner or dependent, should be interviewed separately. There are two potential starting points on the front page. If you are interviewing at a shelter site, which many of you will be, you only have to ask the first question, are you currently staying here? And then move to the introduction. If the respondent says no, follow the arrows to the next question.
Hello, my name is Naamilia, and I'm helping Wilder do a survey of people who do not have a regular or permanent place to stay. Are you currently staying here?
Yes.
Wilder Research is doing these interviews to learn more about homelessness in Minnesota and to help find solutions for ending homelessness. If you complete an interview, we will give you a $10 cash to thank you for your time. The interview takes about 30 minutes and is voluntary. You do not have to participate if you don't want to. If you decide not to, this will not affect any of the services you are receiving. If there are questions you don't wish to answer, we will skip them. This interview is confidential. We do not ask for your name, and you will not be identified in any way. Are you willing to do the survey with me now?
Yes.
The other potential starting point is for those who are interviewing at a non-shelter site, such as a hot meal program or a community center. You would start with the question, are you currently staying in a shelter, transitional housing program, or hotel or motel that you received a voucher for? And then follow the arrows through the remaining screening questions.
Are you currently staying in a shelter, transitional housing program, or a hotel or motel that you received a voucher for?
No.
Are you currently staying in a place that is not a regular or permanent place to stay, such as outdoors, in a car or vacant building or encampment?
No.
Are you currently doubled up with a friend or family on a temporary basis because you have nowhere else to go?
No.
And are you about to be evicted with nowhere else to go, like needing to leave within 14 days?
No.
Well, thank you for your time. We can't continue this interview because your housing situation does not meet the criteria for this study.
Okay.
If the respondent says no to that final question in the screener, then they are not eligible to conduct the interview. Thank them for their time and let them know that you cannot continue because their current housing situation does not meet the criteria for the study. If the respondent becomes angry because they do not qualify and will not get the cash incentive, or if at any time or any point you feel that your safety is at risk, direct the respondent to the site leader. The final part of the introduction is where you remind respondents about the confidentiality of the interview. This is very important as we want people to feel comfortable and safe. We do not need anyone to provide their name, and you can remind participants that they do not have to answer any questions they don't want to. Okay, let's start with question 1. I want to illustrate the basic concept of moving from a response category to a follow-up question. You would start out by asking the question, last night, did you stay with anyone else in your family or household, or were you on your own? If they say they were on their own, you would fill in the on your own response and go to the next question. But if they say they were with somebody else, you would fill in the with others option. Follow the arrow and then ask the follow-up questions. In question 2, the idea is to try and capture an accurate picture of the respondent's last 30 days of housing. The numbers in each of the empty boxes should add up to 30. If their numbers do not add up to 30, try to go back one time and reconcile the numbers. If they still don't add up to 30 after double checking with the respondent, you can move on. Here is an example of how that would work in practice.
Think back on the past month. In the last 30 days, including this one, how many nights have you spent outside in a car or vacant building or some other place not intended for housing?
10.
10. Doubled up in someone else's house, apartment, or room?
10.
In a shelter or transitional housing program?
8.
In regular housing, not doubled up?
7.
And in some other type of place?
0.
0. So with the numbers, it looks like it's not adding to 30. Let's just do it all over again and make sure that everything adds to 30. So think back again on the past month. In the last 30 days, including this one, how many nights have you spent outside in a car or vacant building or some other place not intended for housing?
10.
Doubled up in someone else's house, apartment, or room?
10.
In a shelter or transitional housing program?
5.
In regular housing, not doubled up?
5.
And in some other type of place?
0.
So it looks like it adds up to 30.
Now we're going to move to a question on placements. The question reads, have you ever lived in a foster home? If they answer yes, then you would follow the arrow into the box and ask the follow-up questions and select yes or no according to their answers. Once you've completed this series of questions, you are going to ask the respondent, did you leave any of these living arrangements, meaning the arrangements referenced in the previous question, in the last 12 months? We've listed those facilities again to remind respondents about the options. Now I'd like to walk through a question about public benefits. The question reads, in the last 12 months, have you ever received any of the following public benefits? How about, and then you would read each question A through G and select yes or no, depending on their response. It is important to note that if all of their answers are no, you should still fill in each circle. Do not simply draw a line through all of the no responses, as our scanners will have a hard time picking it up. The next question asks, during the last 12 months, did you lose any services or benefits that you had been receiving? If they say yes, ask the follow-up question and write out their response. Now let's move to the employment question. Again, if the respondent says yes to the first question, you will follow the arrow to the right and ask the follow-up questions. If they say no to being currently employed, then you will ask, in the last 6 months, have you been laid off, terminated, or had your job eliminated? These questions would apply even if they had been working a temporary or day labor job and that job ended. Then work down the page from there. At this point, I want to emphasize that in this interview, we are asking sensitive questions, and people may feel reluctant to share their responses. We have had really excellent luck in the past with people completing this interview. But one of the things that is useful is if the respondent is hesitant or has concerns about the kinds of questions we are asking, remind them that these questions are voluntary and they don't have to answer any questions they don't want to. We will simply move forward with the interview. If you have not seen it already, please watch the Message from Our Study Directors video to hear best practices in trauma-informed interviewing, as well as leading with respect and empathy. For example, a particularly sensitive part of the interview starts with the question, have you ever been attacked or assaulted while you have been homeless? Again, if a respondent seems to be anxious or uncomfortable, just remind them that they don't have to answer the question. I'd also like to skip ahead again to an important point in the survey. This is where we ask respondents whether or not they have children, 17 or younger. It is at this point in the interview where we most often see mistakes, either in the count of the children or with questions not being followed correctly. So we ask, do you have any children aged 17 or younger? If the respondent says yes, you would follow the arrows into the box and ask, how many of your children are 17 or younger? And then record that number. You would then ask, what are their ages? And record those numbers in the boxes below. If they have 3 children, there should be 3 different ages recorded. A little farther down, there is a question that asks respondents if they have children living with them. Follow the arrows to the appropriate follow-up questions. If they have 2 children living with them, you would write the ages of those 2 children in the boxes, and those are the children for whom the rest of the questions apply. One thing that is sometimes a problem when we get the data back to our office is that we don't have matching ages between this question and the previous question about children's ages. We would ask you to please reference back to make sure the ages in both of those questions agree. Let's move on to the question, please remind me, are you 21 or older? If they are 21 or older, then they do not complete this section. However, if they say no, then you want to ask all of the remaining questions. Let's move to the last page of the survey. We have added an open-ended section so that respondents can talk more broadly and openly about their experiences. As they are answering this question, write as much as you can in the blank spaces provided. Please write clearly so that our staff can accurately record responses back at our office. For this question, we want the respondent to have the opportunity to share their experiences in their own words, but we do not want to take up too much of their time. If the respondent is giving a lengthy response, you may want to say, thank you for that. We can now move on to the final interview wrap-up. Finally, make sure to thank participants for their time and say, because the information you just gave me is confidential, I don't want you to give me your name. Instead, could you give me the name of your first pet? If they've never had a pet, ask them to give you the first name of their childhood best friend. At each site, the site leader is responsible for distributing cash incentives. In most cases, particularly at larger sites, you will refer the respondent to the site leader, and that person will give the respondent the incentive for completing the interview. Follow whatever instructions were given to you by your specific site leader. In most cases, the respondent will receive the incentive in an envelope that will have a web link and QR code printed on it that will link them to crisis and other resources if they need it. After you have thanked the respondent and made certain that they've received their incentive, record the end time of the interview and move on to the comments section. You are the best judge of how the interview went, so anything that you tell us to guide us in understanding the quality of the responses will be helpful. After you've completed the interviewer comments, please take a few minutes to go through your whole interview form and make sure it is completed correctly. If there is something you really weren't clear about, you can write a brief note in the margins next to the relevant question, and we will try to figure that out on our end. Just make sure that everything is complete. This is a very critical step in the process. And finally, after you have watched this video and received your training materials, remember to practice. That will make the interview go more smoothly when you get to an actual interviewing situation. Well, that is the end of the Minnesota Homeless Study interviewer training. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and for helping us with the study. We really could not do it without you. Thank you.